All right, let's jump right into this revision explainer. We're breaking down MEC-101 Block 7, turning some pretty dense economic theory into a simple, structured guide to non-cooperative game theory. If you've been staring at payoff matrices and probability vectors feeling a little overwhelmed, you're in the right spot. We're going to simplify these concepts for your revision, focus on the absolute most critical takeaways, and test your knowledge as we go.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the rules of the game, then hit Unit 20 on static games, move into Unit 21 for real-world applications, tackle Unit 22 on dynamic games, and finally wrap up with a final revision challenge.
Starting off with Section 1, the rules of the game.
First things first, we've got to draw a hard line between cooperative and non-cooperative games. Cooperative games are all about binding agreements. Think legal contracts that literally force players to stick to a plan. But our focus in Block 7 is non-cooperative game theory. This is the wild world of interdependence and conflict, where there are absolutely no binding agreements. You're making decisions by trying to anticipate the actions and reactions of others, all while trying to maximize your own payout. Think of it like a strategic dance where everyone's out for themselves, but you absolutely have to anticipate the other person's moves.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, which covers Unit 20, static games of complete information.
So in Unit 20, we're looking at static games. That means players are making moves at the exact same time, and everyone knows all the possible payoffs. You don't know what the other person is doing right this second, but you know the rewards or punishments for every possible scenario. The absolute heart of this unit? The Nash equilibrium. It's basically that sweet spot where everyone is doing the very best they can, given what everyone else is doing. Because of that, nobody has any reason to change their strategy. It's a point of strategic stability, totally self-enforcing.
But how do we actually play these games? Well, we weigh pure strategies, like deciding I'm always going to choose left or I'm always going to choose top, against mixed strategies. Mixed strategies are where you shake things up. You're randomizing your choices based on a set probability, kind of like flipping a coin, so your opponent literally can't predict your next move. And keep in mind, a mixed strategy can actually beat out a pure strategy, and some games only ever find a Nash equilibrium when players mix things up.
Now, since mixed strategies introduce all this uncertainty, how do we figure out our expected payoff? It's actually just a two-step process, straight from the text. First, you take the payoff for each pure strategy and weight it by the probability that it gets played. Second, you just add up those weighted payoffs. Boom! It's a super straightforward mathematical way to find your average expected outcome when choices are randomized.
All right, time for a quick active recall check. These are pulled right from the text's Check Your Progress exercises to help your revision stick. Think about this for a second. What exactly is a strictly dominated strategy?
If you said it's a strategy that always guarantees a worse payoff no matter what the other guy does, you hit the nail on the head. Since a rational player is never going to pick a guaranteed loser, we can literally just cross it off the board. This sets us up perfectly for a powerful tool called the iterated elimination of dominated strategies, where we just keep stripping away the bad options until the game's actual outcome becomes totally clear.
Which brings us to Section 3, covering Unit 21, Real-World Applications. Let's crank up the stakes a bit. Unit 21 takes those static game frameworks we just built and throws them at massive, messy, real-world economic problems. We're talking about things like the tragedy of the commons and duopoly markets. We're translating pure math into real human behavior and market dynamics.
We can use these specific models to decode so much. Like, why do competing firms over-extract shared resources? The prisoner's dilemma explains that. How do firms compete on the sheer quantity they produce? That's the Cornell model. If they're battling over price, we look at the Bertrand model. There's even Hotelling's location game, which perfectly explains why you always see two competing ice cream stands set up right next to each other on the exact same beach.
Now, to solve these real-world problems where players have basically infinite choices, like setting an exact price down to the cent or deciding exactly how much effort to exert, a simple matrix won't cut it. Instead, we heavily rely on the best response function. The text uses a great analogy for this, a synergistic relationship, like a marriage, where one person's extra effort actually benefits both people. The math tracks exactly how much effort player A should put in, mapped against every single possible level of effort player B might try.
Let's do another quick, active memory test from the Unit 21 checkpoint, because this one is absolutely crucial for your exams. If you were sitting there right now, how would you accurately define a best response function?
Got it in your head? It's simply the formula that dictates your absolute optimal strategy for every possible move your opponent could make. And here's the cool part.
When you graph player 1's best response function against player 2's, the exact point where those lines cross, that is our Nash equilibrium for these continuous real-world games. It's the sweet spot where both players are mutually playing their absolute best responses.
All right, Section 4. Let's dive into Unit 22, Dynamic Games.
Here is where we finally introduce the element of time. In the real world, you rarely just interact with someone once. When games are played infinitely, players can actually use promises and threats about the future to enforce cooperation today. We call this a trigger strategy. The text highlights this beautifully. You cooperate at first, but if the other player betrays you even once, it triggers a massive, unforgiving punishment phase. Honestly, it's the sheer fear of tomorrow's punishment that keeps everyone playing nice today.
So, how is this different from what we saw back in Unit 2.0? Well, dynamic games have sequential moves. I go, then you go. Because of that, we map them out visually as branching trees, which is called the extensive format. And to solve them, we use a really clever trick called backward induction. You literally look at the very last possible move of the entire game, and you reason backward, figure out your best move right now. This gets us a much more refined solution known as a subgame perfect Nash equilibrium. And, as we just saw, these repeated interactions totally explain how competitors can actually sustain collusion and cooperation over a long period.
Finally, Section 5, the final revision challenge. Let's bring it all together and consolidate what we've covered across all 3 units. Take a look at this actual worksheet from the text. If you can comfortably define things like a cooperative game, a sequential game, and common knowledge out loud right now, you are absolutely crushing Block 7. I highly recommend using these check your progress sections as your main revision tool. To quickly recap our whole revision journey today, Unit 20 laid the groundwork with static rules, pure and mixed strategies, and the incredibly important Nash equilibrium. Unit 21 took those rules and threw them at messy, real-world market applications, using best response functions to crack duopolies and resource issues. And Unit 22 proved that when you add time, sequential moves, and infinite repetition to a game, you can completely flip the outcome, sometimes actually forcing cooperation where there used to be pure conflict. I'm going to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on as you keep studying. We know that in a one-shot static prisoner's dilemma, the Nash equilibrium totally forces mutual betrayal. But based on what we just learned in Unit 22, how exactly does the threat of tomorrow, this looming shadow of the future, change our strategic choices to actually guarantee cooperation today? Think deeply about those trigger strategies and subgame perfect equilibria. All right, thank you so much for joining this Revision Masterclass Explainer, and best of luck with the rest of your game theory prep.